This is Coaching What Works, in the moment classroom coaching for K-12 teachers. Got a moment? Hi everybody. Welcome. I'm Tricia O'Hara, a lifelong classroom coach and teacher in pre-K through 12 at-risk schools and the creator of Coaching What Works, What They Didn't Teach You in Teacher Training. If you are a teacher, any kind of teacher, then this message is for you. Because I'm going to share with you a more useful way to teach, easier, faster, better than how you are teaching now. And if you already teach this way, then we need to learn from you. You can help your peers to learn this too. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to apply the most basic and powerful research, core teaching skills common to all subjects that separate the successful teacher from the unsuccessful one. We'll show you step by step how you can not only transform your own teaching practice, but how you can share your experience, your wisdom, your unique personal art of teaching with your peers. We'll show you so you can teach, no kidding, practically anything to practically anybody. But first, let me ask you, are you exhausted from teaching? Feeling depressed and defeated? Has your idealistic calling to teach made you wonder, what the bleep was I thinking? What would you do so you don't feel so exhausted from working so hard? You know those same 3 to 5 eager kids who volunteer answers to all your questions? What would your classes be like if the rest of your students participated instead of sitting silently in fossilized passivity? What if your English language learners, your ELLs, participated fully and confidently with the light of understanding in their eyes instead of trying to be invisible? What could you accomplish if your students were performing daily at or near 90% proficiency instead of at the usual 50%? What would you be willing to do? If these are your challenges, then this may be the most valuable video you'll see all year. The Buddha attained enlightenment by being outside the walls of his palace, seeing what reality is. I've spent my career outside the ivory tower walls of academia. You too are probably outside those walls. You too know what reality is. You and I are living it every time we step into the classroom. Let's go there. Let's talk about that. This is a story that is true for me and for virtually all the participants of Coaching What Works. It may or may not be true for you. Listen, here's the real reason I'm talking to you today. I'm going to pull back the curtain and tell you the truth. I've had the extraordinary luck and honor of teaching and coaching in at-risk classrooms, pre-K through college, nationally and internationally, over my lifetime. At the end of my career, I put all that feedback I've collected end to end. I was stunned. Bottom line, veteran and new teachers alike say the same thing. Every teacher needs to know this. This should be required professional development, PD, and no new teacher should be given her first class until she learns this. Teachers and students have always been my greatest mentors. When they talk, I listen. I thought to myself, self, if there really are pearly gates, and we really do have to account for ourselves at those heavenly gates, then I was going to be in big, big trouble if I didn't at least try to get this information into your capable hands. That's why I'm here talking to you instead of traveling the world in my well-deserved retirement. If there's one thing I hope to leave behind for you, it's a tried and true way to make your tough job easier. Subject matter aside, curriculum aside, technology aside, philosophical or political beliefs aside, even personal style aside. A tried and true way, in your hands, in your classroom, in the moment, something you can count on every day. By helping you, the real magic happens. The real magic is what can happen for all your students. There is nothing more beautiful than a classroom filled with confident, competent, happy students. Isn't that what you want? If you haven't heard my story, then I'll tell you a little more later. But before I get to that, let me share something with you. Let me show you just a sampling from my own resource library. It's taken my lifetime to learn from experts, mentors, top trainers, live and online workshops and coursework, books, curriculum, CDs, DVDs, expert consultations. For example, research, instructional design, history of teaching, reforms, trends, reading, writing, vocabulary, classroom management, engagement, motivation, habit, testing, curricula, neuroscience, intervention, staff development, collaboration, coaching, diversity, equity, presentation, product design, and online marketing. What's the commonality? I've purchased and studied them all to help deliver what I've learned into your hands. Thousands of dollars and decades of effort. And to my surprise, it was often the throwaway lines, the comments made as asides in training Q&A sessions or personal interviews that yielded the clearest insights and the most useful keys to access their content. For example, explicit teaching guru Anita Archer. Model everything. If you choose not to model, you will model over and over one-on-one. Or behavior management expert Randy Sprick. The more things you can do to help students feel safe and comfortable, the greater probability that kids will feel a sense of appreciation and loyalty to you. Or consider vocabulary icons Beck and McGowan. In a successful vocabulary program, words do not appear as part of one classroom exercise and then drop from sight. How about you? What's in your own professional library? Ours is a multi-billion-dollar industry with many stakeholders, many theories, full of constant change, so many innovations, here today and gone tomorrow. I know you know what I mean. The bulk of education research has occurred in the last 60 years. We are swimming in research-rich seas. Exciting stuff. The question is, when do we teachers get to study that? When do we get to swim in those rich seas? The surface of education's storm-tossed seas is in constant turmoil. Teachers can't live on this turbulent surface if we are to get our daily job done. Instead, we live below in the relative calm of ocean depths, in the consistency of day-to-day teaching. Okay, if you can't put calm and classroom in the same sentence, can we agree instead on, say, controlled chaos? Just as turbulence on the ocean's surface has little effect in the ocean's depths, education's political storms give us few answers we can directly apply. Do you know what teachers secretly wish you knew about professional development but will never ever tell you to your face? We'll tell you their secret. Teachers want to master how to teach effectively. The vast majority of new teachers enter their first classroom ill-prepared and must learn on their own basic foundational skills such as managing a classroom, engaging students, structuring and presenting lessons. Isolated from one another, this can take teachers years to accomplish. When a teacher fails to do this, she or he is blamed for somehow failing to grasp the art of teaching. Want proof? Just ask teachers about their own teacher preparation. Again and again, I've asked myself, why don't we teachers have the research in our hands? Not academic discourse, not statistical graphs. I mean research that we can readily understand and directly apply. Listen, educational research is now irrefutable and inescapable, but the gap between what we know really works and what we are still doing persists in the vast majority of our classrooms. I just plain got tired of asking how come we teachers don't have the research in our hands when and where we need it, and finally I just put it together myself. None of it is my approach, rather it is a shared contribution. Human knowledge and understanding is a very cumulative affair. We all stand on the shoulders of others who precede us. Isaac Newton said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Luckily, I stand on the shoulders of some of the greats in our profession. My shoulders have gotten strong. Come stand on my shoulders. Here's my story. I'm a teacher like you with a love of kids, full of idealism, hope, good intentions, and also fair measures of self-doubt, fatigue, and failure. I began as an activity-based teacher, and I still love to teach through projects. By a sheer twist of fate, As a young teacher, I fell into a fantastic job that put me right smack in the middle of one of education's most contentious battles, working with the developers of direct instruction in the 1960s. As lead teacher at a university lab school, I managed our program's half-day preschool for disadvantaged 4- and 5-year-olds, where my colleagues and I taught and field-tested program prototypes in language, reading, and math. Each school day, after their lunch, to this day I still avoid Jell-O, and after their nap time, I put the kids on the bus and ran upstairs to the rest of my day, illustrating these same pre-publication programs. My drafting table stood in the midst of the developers. While I illustrated task after task, I listened to them and marveled at the rigor they applied to each task, each concept, each scope and sequence, always debating, sometimes arguing, swearing, or joking. The result was the first ever scripted instruction, which caused a firestorm from the educational establishment that persists to this day. Ironic, because many programs today are scripted. As a result, most teachers still have basic misconceptions about explicit or direct teaching. We made instructional decisions based on data. Sound familiar? Our mantras were keep your eye on the data and act on it, and if the student hasn't learned, the teacher hasn't taught. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Sure, the kids have to attend school for you to teach them, and yes, they have to come to school with adequate food and sleep. Ever heard of project follow-through? I've asked this question for decades. I can count on both hands the teachers who have heard of it. Project Follow-Through was the largest and most expensive experiment in U.S. education, the cornerstone of the war on poverty. Extensive evaluations occurred from 1968 to 1977. Funding continued until 1995. 30 years later, in 1999, joint findings by the National Education Association and the American Association of School Administrators echoed what follow-through revealed. Follow-through intended to identify which whole school, curriculum, and instructional approaches to raise student achievement worked best and which did not. At its height, follow-through grew to encompass 20 different interventions, 700,000 students in 178 projects nationwide. The goal was to identify, fund, and disseminate the most effective instructional practices for disadvantaged and, by extension, advantaged students alike. Indeed, follow-through was comprehensive in both depth and breadth. Let's take a closer look. There were essentially 3 approaches around which the competing models clustered: basic academic skills, cognitive or problem-solving skills, and self-esteem skills. The horizontal baseline of 0 represents the control group, that is, children who did not participate in project follow-through programs. Scores above the 0 line indicate a positive change in performance compared to the control group. That is, they did better. Scores below the 0 line indicate a negative change in performance compared to the control group. They did worse. Here you can see that many models did much worse than the standard education programs provided to the control groups. Direct instruction, also called explicit teaching, the basic skills model on the far left of the graph, was the clear winner, raising participating children's average scores in these basic skill areas to near the national average. As you can see, in fact, direct instruction excelled across all 3 areas: basic academic skills, cognitive or problem-solving skills, and self-esteem skills. Here's a question for you. Based on what you see here, which model would you have endorsed or supported? You can read the history and fascinating details of follow-through online. We'll tell you the surprise ending to this tale in an upcoming video. I smile now to remember myself in the mid-1970s as a young and naive trainer, believing that my colleagues and I would be able to retire early when teachers soon applied this compelling research. Ah, youthful naivete. This remarkable experience, however, drove the underlying principles of explicit teaching deep into my bones. I've continued to delve into what emerging evidence reveals, what matters and what does not. I've succeeded, failed, and succeeded again. My successes always came with applying the research. What I found out is that applying foundational research really works. I tell you my story because what I have learned can make all the difference for you. and you can make all the difference for the kids. I've been advised to write a book. From what I've seen, the last thing teachers need is another textbook. Over decades in classrooms, I've never once observed any teacher reach for a textbook on teaching while they're teaching. Coaching What Works, what they didn't teach you in teacher training, is a coaching system to visibly improve teaching without more textbooks or workshops or consultants or curriculum. Coaching What Works is different. This simple tool is born from a lifetime of working side by side with teachers like you. Teachers and students have taught me how to translate what the experts say into a simple, real-world professional development tool, into something that frees us so we can get to the point, to cut to the chase, to get clear about, to actually implement, to actually do what works best. Coaching What Works, what they didn't teach you in teacher training, is a DIY, do-it-yourself professional development tool to help K-12 teachers apply foundational research so that you really can teach practically anything to practically anybody. Work solo, or ideally in peer coaching teams, to create common language and common experience, even if you can't imagine juggling one more demand. It gives a done-for-you synopsis of teaching basics' most crucial, powerful steps. The result is something you can count on easier, faster, better. It's condensed enough to gather the most compelling teaching basics all in one place. We'll share more later about key research in the next few videos. Suffice it to say that education is up to date on what works best. The data are in, confirmed and reconfirmed. We no longer have to argue or discredit the facts. We can move forward with confidence. It's plain spoken enough to translate research into crystal clear, step-by-step practice. Mark Twain famously said, "Don't use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do." We've avoided confusing academic terms or cutesy jargon. You know, with each education innovation, I'm reminded of the fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes. Remember it? Outfitted and outwitted by his unscrupulous tailors, the emperor parades naked through the streets in what he believes are his splendid new clothes. His subjects exclaim how beautiful they are, all except for one little boy who points and shouts, "Look, the emperor has no clothes." With each new education innovation comes new and confusing jargon, called by some experts edu-speak or edu-babble, which wraps our old teaching challenges in new clothes. As a profession, we are convinced time and again that this latest jargon will fix our problems, until it doesn't. If you've taught any length of time, I know you know what I mean. It's happening now and will continue to happen until we look seriously at and act on the research rather than forcing teachers to waste time unraveling a tangle of jargon that does little to help them actually teach the kids. Indeed, plain spoken language, 50-cent words, always seems to work best for kids and for their teachers. Coaching What Works is practitioner-friendly enough to use immediately, as in right now. And surprise, it's appealing enough to enjoy. Imagine that, in a colorful, amusing, retro design. You don't get more guidelines, more assessments, more rubrics, more PLC directives to digest. What you get instead is multi-year professional development that's ready to implement today. Leonardo da Vinci said, "Simplicity is the greatest sophistication." Pete Seeger said, "Any darn fool can make something complex. It takes genius to make something simple." Now, I'm not calling anybody either a fool or a genius, but I think you get the point. Simplicity works. Let's take a look at the framework of this professional development tool. Here are the big ideas. Master how to teach explicitly. Boost student performance dramatically. Easy to use teacher checklists. Work solo or in classroom coaching teams. Practice key research to proficiency. And a template for ongoing job-embedded professional development. One of the most fascinating things I learned through years of trial and error is what format works best to convey content. How are these powerful ideas woven together, you ask? The answer is simple: checklists. What we have found as on-the-ground implementers is verified by a 2009 surprise blockbuster book, The Checklist Manifesto: How to Get Things Right by Atul Gawande. Harvard MD Gawande steered a worldwide, decade-long project for the World Health Organization, WHO, to reduce surgical mortality rates by the use of practitioner checklists. As surprising as it sounds, humble checklists are shockingly effective. What began in aviation after an air disaster in 1935 has long been the gold standard. Checklists not only work, they save lives. In the last decade that medicine has studied effects of using surgical checklists worldwide, results were so dramatic, 32% reduction in complications and 47% reduction in deaths, that WHO wasn't sure whether to believe them. Lists. There's something intensely satisfying about lists, especially crossing something off a list. People love lists, especially teachers with a room full of kids. Not just any checklist, not lengthy observation or discussion rubrics. Come on, who has time for those? A well-made checklist frees you from missing essential task steps so you can adapt creatively to the complexities of the moment, what great practitioners do. Not just about ticking boxes, the ultimate goal of a well-made checklist is about embracing a culture of teamwork and discipline, what teachers have been asking for all along. Come closer. Let's take a closer look at what's inside Coaching What Works. Each Coaching What Works kit contains teacher checklists and companion flashcards. It's designed for ongoing professional development over time. These props and prompts provide rules of thumb support to use while you teach. Subject matter aside, curriculum aside, this is hands-on. Like big playing cards, teacher checklists are even easy to find on a cluttered desk or durable enough to withstand your daily use and even kids stepping on them. Here's the thing. Volumes have been written on the content of these simple teaching checklists. Encyclopedias of content. Everything from verbatim transcripts to lengthy academic discourse. None of these are much help when we're facing a class of 20, 30, 40 kids or more. Let's take a closer look. Teacher Checklist 1, Creating Dynamic Classroom Coaching Teams. Your ready-to-use professional learning community, including what to work on. Checklist 2, Positive Classrooms. Every teacher ought to know how to create one. Checklist 3, Active Student Engagement. Everybody talks about student engagement. Here's how to get it installed. Checklist 4, Explicit Teaching Delivery. The nuts and bolts you can use for every subject matter. Checklist 5, Explicit Teaching Classroom Observation, an easy way to track your practice. Checklist 6, Explicit Teaching Design, what expert programmers do. Checklist 7, Vocabulary Rules, based on 35 years of vocabulary research, how to introduce new words and how to follow up. Checklist 8, Accessing Text. Most teachers want their students to take responsibility for their learning. Here's how. And Checklist 9, School-wide Observation. On one page, keep track of how you're progressing to use key research. And flashcards to prompt you, your students, and your coaching teammates. I see an exciting journey in the future for you. Really, it's all right here in the cards. Let's consider one of the first checklists in the kit. Our first teaching responsibility is to manage our classroom. 50% of teachers leave the profession within 5 years, mostly because we cannot manage our classroom. Until now, teachers have been pretty much on their own to close foundational gaps in their teacher preparation. Without guided practice, this often can take teachers years of isolated effort. If we're lucky, we get job-embedded, comprehensive behavior management training, which also can take years. In the mid-1990s, I was given an emergency special assignment in a major U.S. city that was in the midst of a crack cocaine epidemic. Out-of-control classrooms of crack-affected kids had brought any hope of teaching to a standstill. The kids were melting down. The teachers were in shock. There was no time to study the volumes written on behavior management. Teachers needed a miracle to believe that they could turn this situation around. Positive Classrooms, the teacher checklist that you see here, is a 12-step program that was literally born in trial by fire and gunfire. Let's take a closer look. When teachers applied these positive class management principles, such as maintaining a 3-to-1 ratio, or reprimanding misbehavior privately, or practicing expectations, it worked so well it was almost scary. But it's not magic, it's research in action. This turnaround became a model for the rest of the schools in the citywide project. Positive Classrooms Teacher Checklist is a synthesis. The highlights summarized from top behavior experts about what works best to create and maintain a positive learning environment. Here are 12 steps every teacher must know to create safe, comfortable classrooms and loyal, appreciative students. It's veteran teachers' handy reference for pesky behavior problems and new teachers' daily classroom management review. Every student and every teacher deserve to coexist in a positive classroom. Every teacher ought to know how to create one. To be honest, I don't know you. I don't know who you are or how motivated you are. You may be thinking right now, oh, I already know all that. And you're right. You may already know it. But the only thing that really matters is, are you doing it? If you want to find out for sure, go ahead and use our free observation form, School-Wide Observation Checklist. We'll be sending it your way soon. How do you measure up? Are you walking your talk? Or maybe you're saying to yourself, not now. Or maybe, leave me alone to teach my own way. Okay, you're right again. So long as 90% of your students are at or near 90% proficiency, then you are good to go. If they are not, hey, you don't have the luxury to do it your way. Most teachers seem to live lives of quiet desperation. We're constantly bombarded with unexpected demands heaped upon us on top of our daily teaching responsibilities. You may be saying, I don't have time for anything else. I say to you, this tool will make your tough job get easier. Maybe you shudder at the notion of research and you'd rather dismiss it. Few teachers, maybe 10%, are actually excited about research. That's understandable. It's hard to read, hard to understand, hard to interpret, much less to implement. Don't worry, you'll be amazed at how simple this format is. In fact, teacher checklists are designed to use while you teach. You can tuck a checklist in your presentation book, or you can hang it from your document reader for a quick glance now and then. I have to tell you a story about finding the right words to convey big ideas in simple terms. The more I worked with the checklist format, which of course requires simple language and short phrases, the more I was amazed at teachers' responses. No matter how appropriate was my setup prior to distributing a teacher checklist, once it was in teachers' hands, I could not get their attention back. Every teacher read every single word on a checklist before they were willing to look up. I experimented with ways to regain their attention, including, no kidding, telling them their pants were on fire. Nothing worked. They were fully absorbed in reading. I took that as a good sign. See for yourself what this engaging process looks like in our free video, Typical Coaching Day, that awaits you when you sign up. Watch what a smart middle school peer coaching team does in their 4th coaching session. I'll be sending you a few more videos in the near future. In the next video, I'm going to teach you the real Common Core. One single thing, the one core teaching skill common to all subjects that will change the way you teach forever. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. There's a body of largely unimplemented research out there for our profession still to apply. I hope this helps you to picture how you could get that job done. If you're game for that, we'd love to assist you in that endeavor. Sign up with your name and email in the box to access your next free video, Typical Coaching Day. Please post your comments and questions below, and I'll try to personally respond to as many as I can. We love to know what you think. Oh, and if you like what you heard today, then hit those like and share buttons. So go ahead and sign up here now. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for the moment. This is Coaching What Works in the Moment, classroom coaching for K-12 teachers.